What about MPs who stand up here and denounce the government for this activity? Have you shared with them the kind of information that you have?
The information is there. When MPs come and ask for information, we give them what they can. But anybody who would stand up and say that being vigilant against terrorism and terrorism fundraising is a foolish thing to do, I think that's a foolish position to take. We are bound as Canadians to do this.
I think of a guy like Jim Karagiannis, Liberal MP from Scarborough in Toronto. Are there enough Tamils in his riding that he personally, we invited him on the show and he's not feeling well today, but what's the political might of this organization? If he doesn't appear to be sympathetic to their cause, do they have enough muscle to get him defeated in an election?
Well, I would hope, Mike, that any member of Parliament would not be swayed by the thought of losing votes when it comes to areas of safety and security. Let's face it, we're all politicians. We have things that move us this way or that when it comes to supporting various causes. But when it comes to safety and security, there can't be any wishy-washy. There can't be any backing down out of fear that you're going to lose a few votes. This is the Tamil Tigers and the movement that supports them. These are very real organizations that kill innocent people in non-military settings, and we can't have that happen.
Let me ask you, changing subjects just slightly, and then I want to get back to Colin Freeze about how much money we're talking about, because I know you're not allowed to talk about the amount of money here, but I'm certain it's not insignificant. Gloria Galloway, parliamentary correspondent, Globe and Mail, today's newspaper, says there's been a change in policy related to prisoners convicted overseas wanting to come back home. They now must undergo a security check before we'll automatically let them out of some nasty prison overseas to a club-fed operation like William Head or one of these places with a golf course over here. There's a lot of, in the Globe story, bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo. When I read that story, I say, what they're talking about here is saying if you're a drug dealer and you get caught overseas, you can do your time over there, not back here where it's cushy.
I can tell you, Mike, there's no policy change, but there may be a change in terms of acting on the procedures that are in place. Liberals put in certain laws that have been in place for a long time related to, do you bring dangerous criminals back to Canada before they've served their time in other countries? And that involves doing security checks. The Liberals, as in many areas, were negligent when it comes to safety and security issues. And we are not negligent. We try to be very vigorous on this. There's no change in policy. We're just putting in place the procedures that were there that they didn't act on.
You're enforcing a policy that was already there.
That's exactly right.
But it looks to me like if somebody's into drugs as a professional criminal, they'll do their time overseas rather than do it back here.
Well, we evaluate each request one at a time, but I can tell you we're in no rush to bring back to Canada Canadians who have gone to other countries, done serious crime, and then they think they can just come back into Canada, get paroled, or not do any time at all. That's not what we're about in terms of protecting Canadians.
Stockwell Day, thanks for joining us today. Colin Freeze, if I can slip back to you, on the money side of the World Tamil movement, are we talking hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? What kind of money do you think they're generating here in Canada?
Well, Mike, in the items the RCMP seized from the Toronto offices, it's very specific. We're talking about, I think, millions of dollars here. In fact, one of the sort of gems that was seized, and I was just reviewing certain affidavit material, was that there was a letter from Sri Lanka sent to the World Tamil Movement where the leader of the Tamil Tigers said, look, we're going to need to raise $10 million in 10 million rupees, I think, in the next few months, and we're going to rely on Canada for a big proportion of that. I think it was 15 or 30%. And if I recall doing the conversions rightly at the time, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not, but over time, I think we're talking about millions that's alleged by the Mounties to have gone out of this organization to the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka.
And of that, do you have any way of guessing how much of it's really extorted and how much of it's a genuine goodwill offering by the Tamils of Canada?
Well, Mike, I think the question is when the a hat used to be passed around a bar in New York, an Irish bar in New York on St. Patrick's Day for the IRA. I mean, was that extortion? I don't know. All I know is that, talking to some Tamil organizations, I said, do you regard the Tamil Tigers as freedom fighters or terrorists? A fair amount of people here do regard them as freedom fighters. What's clear is that under Canadian law, since 2006, through the initiative of Mr. Day, they are regarded as a terrorist organization here, and as of today, the World Tamil Movement is considered a terrorist organization in Canadian law. You know, is it extortion? Is it involuntary? There's evidence to support both, but I think after today it'll be much harder for people to give money to the World Tamil Movement.
Colin Freeze, expert on national security, thanks so much for joining us from the Globe and Mail in Toronto. Appreciate your expertise. Stay with us. Coming up next on Mike Duffy Live, we're going to look at that terrible prison break